Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, global population, temperature rate. Right. If you've been following me on Telegram, you know what I'm going to be talking about. If you don't, then you still will anyway, because of the title. Perhaps I should have thought this into our through. Oh. So before we start, here's a word from our sponsor.
Samuel N. Fisher, author of the Legion Saga. After a top-secret, multinational military experiment goes horribly wrong in the deserted city of Pripyat in 1992, it uncovers a nightmarish 25,000-year-old plot that could spell the end of humanity. Who knows? Hopefully if they make a movie out of it, they'll cast me.
You like that? Yeah, it sponsors me, not sponsoring myself. The reason why I put that up, if I started that way, is I've had a couple of people ask me how they can support me. Do I have a Patreon or a subscribe star or anything like that? And no, I don't. No. The information I provide is free. If you want to support me, buy me books. That's all you need to do. Available on Amazon. Any bookstore. Just put in Samuel M. Fisher, you'll find at least one. Anyway. This kind of ties into the Ukraine thing. And it's more to do with the misconception that we're being visited by entities from other planets. Aliens. And we have been for thousands of years. See, there's a problem with that. No, it's not. The space is fake. Or even that the Earth is flat. Neither of those things are true. It's the fact that these things are from another world, but not from another planet. We've been lied to on multiple levels. Primarily in the beginning through our religions. And then through our science. So on. See, the abduction phenomena that we're experiencing now is a spiritual thing. And the reason, this isn't an old idea, thinking it's spiritual or interdimensional, even, if you want to be scientific about it. It's essentially spiritual. It's not a new idea. Most ufologists end up coming to this point in their research eventually. It's just inevitable. People like John Mack, who was the tenured head of psychology at Harvard for a very long time, even when they tried to get rid of him. He went into all this to debunk it, and then started to become more and more of a believer. But he believed it was a more dimensional thing. Jacques Vallée is another one, Whitley Strieber, Barry Taft. The list goes on and on and on and on. And the reason being is there's a lot of commonalities between the paranormal world and the ufological world. Particularly with alien abduction, but also with the UFOs themselves. It's the nature of them. It's a little known fact that for a few days before an abduction and a few days after, there is always some sort of poltergeist activity happening. Happens all the time. Happens without fail, but it's not reported on very much. Very strange, really. I think it's because ufologists don't know how to properly sort of process the information. Is the nature of the abductions themselves. They seem very spiritually motivated. I mean, there's only so many times you can abduct someone and nick all the sperm. So there has to be some other sort of element to it. Quite a few were coming out with the idea that maybe it's fear. It's to generate fear. It's something to feed off now. What does that sound like? Sounds like demons. UFOs can materialise and dematerialise at will, just on a dime. The vast majority of sightings are just glowing balls. Now, what do you see in paranormal programs all the time? Orbs flying around. I'll show you a bit of footage in a second. And it's of a Mexican fighter jet. It's quite a famous piece of footage, but if you look closely, look for any sort of machinery behind the lights, right? And tell me if you see anything. No, see? Now this is where the lie begins. I've often said when I started researching, I began with the paranormal, went on to UFOs. Naturally this led on to religion. Now how come that happened? Well, it's the same thing. I mean, normally people start off with UFOs and go the other way. I didn't, I started off with the paranormal. I can see the sort of correlations between the two quite well, almost instantly. It was leading on to the religion part. I mean, I've always been interested in religion and ancient history anyway. It's been something I've researched for a heck of a long time. But it was marrying what I knew from the paranormal research and the ufology research into the religious side of things. Now naturally, as you start researching the religions, you start to notice that, well, first of all, the three main ones, the three Abrahamic religions, which are Islam, Judaism and Christianity, all stem from the Judean, like, sort of belief, you know, the Torah, in a way. They all stem from the same stories. But if you look around the world at other cultures, you started to notice the same stories cropping up. just interpreted in a different sort of way. And some of these are ancient, so ancient. 90% of the Old Testament is based on Sumeria, Babylon. The Anunnaki, which we'll get to in a second. And this is because before the Jews became the Jews, they were actually in slavery to the Babylonians. This is where they developed most of their religion from. They just imprinted their own sort of people on top, a link to their people more than to the Babylonians, obviously. Take Noah, yeah? Noah's a prime example. So the Sumerians, it was Utnapishtim. Before that, it was Atrahasis. And there's been any number of different sort of beings, in a way, throughout our ancient history. But they all have the same sort of common thing, that a flood wiped out most of humanity. And they were the one that helped humanity, helped by their God or their entity, or their intervener, in a way. But with this with the Torah, when the way they've used these tales, they kind of mix things up a bit and mixed and matched a lot of things. Like Genesis, yeah? 7 days of creation, or actually 7 tablets of creation that have got far more detail than Sumerian legends, part of the Enuma Elish. Book of Job is actually older than the Book of Genesis. Several other things, there's 3 different entities in the if you read the Old Testament right, it's actually describing 3 different sorts of meddlers, shall we call them. You get the first of the Elohim, which are a group of beings, not just one, that you meet in the Book of Genesis and turn up every now and again to meet up with Abraham before they go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And several others, yeah, several other times. You get Yahweh, that has been pasted over everything, that in all likelihood could have been a dragon, the way it's described, or a very sort of violent warlike being that David rebels against. Says, we don't want to be ruled by you anymore. We want to go on our own, stand by on our own 2 feet. I mean, what kind of God, right? Lands in a temple, blowing smoke everywhere, fire coming from his nostrils, yeah? Coals out of his mouth, burning coals out of his mouth. And when you've defeated another civilization, you tell them, I want so many cows, so many sheep and goats, so many bars of gold, and so many virgins to eat. What? Alright. Virgins, gold, cows, sheep, what? Yeah, you see. There's even a story in the Bible, I forgot which one it is, where it is, but it's part of David's story, and they're mocking another civilization for being fooled into thinking, by the priests into thinking that they're feeding their God with the same sort of sacrifices for the meals, and it turns out no, it's just the priests that are eating them, including the virgins. What? Going back down the slide. Well, yeah, It's another medley. But you get lots. Whenever these beings show up, there is no, apart from Ezekiel obviously, but there is no sort of vehicle or ship or anything to sort of announce the presence. They're just there, instantly. Just appear. Again, this comes back to the spiritual side of things. See, most of our Old Testament and the Quran and the Torah, the very basis of our religion, is based on a lie. It talks about that old serpent, the devil being cast. What if that's who started our religions in the first place? Now, like I said, when you start talking about the Old Testament, Sumerian and everything else, you have to start talking about the Anunnaki. Now, I have a bit of a problem with the Anunnaki. And not problems, errata. We've got to tie it into Ukraine. The Eurasian civilization was along the Black Sea, where Ukraine is, where the Donbass is. Yeah, it was up there. Down to the northeastern side of Bulgaria. Where incidentally a place called Saratina that I mentioned last time is situated. They were the first to meet the Anunnaki, so the legend goes. But the more you look into it, and the more you see all this happening in Ukraine, it sort of reinforces an idea that I've had for a long while, and that a lot of other scholars have had for ages, that the Anunnaki were people. More specifically, they were us. The meddling that was done thousands and thousands of years ago was to cause a rift in humanity, where the elite went one way and we went another, and they messed with our DNA. This is why we have two chromosomes that are fused together. I've said this before, this is because they were promised a long time ago that they would be as gods. But in order to do this, they need to establish a footprint, make a creation, and that creation was us. Which is why they look like us, you see, but they're not us, they're different. That's why I said this mRNA thing has been done before. There's evidence of this. In Thoth, another thing that I mention a lot. In the China project, another thing I've mentioned a good few times. These outside influences have been infiltrating us since the beginning of time. Influencing the way we go, what we do. Directing humanity in a way that they want. Thoth describes him as coming up from the abyss and taking over their leaders, replacing their leaders. Which I think is happening again. We get that same warning in is it Matthew, I think? Where Jesus turns around and says, as in the days of Noah, So in the days of the coming of the Son of Man be, which basically means that the days of Noah will be seen again, same sort of days, and that's when supposedly Christ will return and blah 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 blah. That's if you believe in Christ. So, what were the days of Noah like? Well, pretty much like now, I think. Maybe a little bit more technologically advanced. Which is why the errata could get away with claiming to be from another planet, or gods. Which generates confusion. But you have to wonder why they're so bothered about Ukraine. Yeah, alright, it's got a gas pipeline going through it. Yes, it's got plenty of resources. But more to it than that. I showed you that video of the pyramid that they found under 65 million year old rock in Ukraine, in Crimea. Not long after that started becoming very public is when Maidan happened. And Putin annexed Crimea. There was a Saratina incident in Bulgaria, not far away. There's been all the raid of the Baghdad Museum, yeah? There's been a very sort of clandestine search for ancient technologies, ancient texts. The CIA had a whole department, whole archaeology department that they sent out everywhere. The only other people who did that were the Nazis, the Ahnenerbe. Himmler was absolutely obsessed with the occult, he really was, and with religious artifacts. And you get Azovstal even, that's still under siege. The Azov Brigade battalion aren't being allowed to surrender. They've been told, you're not surrendering. But there's catacombs underneath it. What are catacombs doing underneath the steelworks? Civilians in there. Okay. Now it's starting to look a bit more fishy. Civilians, scientists maybe. Plenty of computing technology being sent there as well. Yeah, Elon Musk sent loads. Looks even more fishy. Starlink like being sort of floated over the area, and the monitor stations. Yeah, four of those Starlink satellites. They found something. Like I said before, as well, that Hobby King guy, he had that dream tablet, Gilgamesh's dream tablet, for a heck of a long time, and no one said anything about it until, boom, 2018, 2019, and they went and got it off him. Why was that? Because it describes where Arata was, where the gate to Utnapishtim was, that Gilgamesh went through, that was in Arata. They found something. This war is to cover it up. Not my words, we're all working together. This war is to cover it up. The Azovs are being used as the hired muscle to keep the scientists in check. The Russian army's there to keep the Azovs in check. And they'll keep it surrounded. They're not fighting a war, it's just a cover. Anyway, I think I've been weighing up whether to make this quite possibly my last video. I've been noticing that I'm getting even more censored now. I can't even put a link to my videos in comments because it gets wiped or hidden. And I'm starting to think no one's interested anyway. My missus said maybe they're just not ready yet. Ready to hear what you've got to tell them. Yeah, that's true. No. I think it's time to call it a day. I mean, I don't even get any views on Facebook. No one's seeing my stuff on Facebook. Whenever I put a link up for my videos, it don't get shown to anyone. Don't reach anyone. Whenever I post to YouTube, they just cut my views down. Check these pictures out. See? You're taking 50% off pretty much all the time, which means I don't show up in the algorithms. On Telegram, those views aren't converting into views on YouTube. Says loads of people have seen your post. Yeah, they've seen my post, they've just not watched the video. Maybe I'm just going too in depth. Complicated subject, though, you know what I mean? But I don't think people truly understand what we're dealing with. And I don't think many of you ever will. Anyway, like, share, subscribe. I really don't care anymore. See you later.